So I was watching your video about the casting process on the first Scream movie and how you were emphasizing that Wes believed in you. He gave you your break during that audition process. So I was wondering if that carried over to filming. Is there any example of a time on set where Wes really believed in your creative instincts and supported something you wanted to do?
Oh yeah, definitely. I told this story that, when I did the rules scenes, we had the first take and he's like, all right, I got it. Let's move on. And I was like, no, no. I was a young actor, super insecure, and I was like, did I do enough? This is a huge speech, the most I've ever said in film. And he's like, well, we don't need it. And I was like, please. And it just kept bugging him. And he's like, all right, you got another take. And then hit that take. And then he's like, do it again. And he kept it rolling. And we got it on film. It's not digital. And then afterwards, he was like, that was so good. He's like, never ever question asking a director for another take. He goes, because you really nailed it in that second and third take. And it set me on my way of like always feeling like I can collaborate, which I probably shouldn't have felt at such a young age and was such an icon. But he was so inviting. And he told me like in the movie, it's like the second and third take is what he used. So he loved it. So I was very lucky.
I have another very specific line of dialogue I want to ask you about. You have a million lines in this movie that I'll never be able to unhear, and I can't imagine anyone else on this planet delivering. The one that always gets me every time is when you shout, "Everybody's a suspect" in the video stores. The build of that speech is just so spot on, but then it's the intensity of that line that gets me every time. So how many times do you have to do something like that on set before you feel like I nailed it, I got it to like a pitch perfect level?
Now that's something I don't remember how many times we did it. We probably did that like 2 or 3 times, So as you're doing the wide, then you get your lines better until they go to your coverage. And I don't know if I was first or second, but I definitely felt like I was probably in it all day because it was a huge speech and about the whole video store and walking around. And so I just was, it built up to, this and then this and this and this. What are you talking about? Prom night? Listen, dude, listen. Everybody's a suspect. So that's what I felt it should have been. And he gets to a crescendo of craziness. And I do think that the audience seemed to resonate with them.
Absolutely. It most certainly did with me. I also wanted to ask you about the scene where Stu and Randy are kind of fighting as they're trying to convince Sydney to let them in the house, because it's so chaotic and it feels like a moment that can't be totally scripted. So is that kind of how it was like for you guys on set? Was it chaotic? Was there the opportunity to play around with that argument?
That was definitely chaotic, and definitely there was lines and obviously scripted, but running in and out around the house. Who's there? Boo. Who says, no, it's not me, it's him. No, Sydney. No, it's him. That was definitely, like you said, tense, fervorous moment, and it was chaotic. But yeah, we definitely got to play around with it for sure. It wasn't just totally scripted. We were in there, but it was definitely a lot of the script too. But it was, what would you do in that moment? No, listen, listen, no, he's lying. You know what I mean? That was definitely added in and stuff.
Here's a bigger, broader one, because there's not enough time for me to touch on every single scene of yours that I love. Can you give us an example of one beat in Scream that you had a tougher time nailing, that you really had to work on, and then maybe another where it just clicked right from the start? You did it and you immediately knew, I nailed it.
Well, I definitely felt good in the video store because I felt like that was my first day and I was super prepared. And I was like, that was an early one. I got to get this out. It was a big speech. And I think Wes laughed after it. So I think, okay, that was a good sign. Like, yo, you're so crazy. You already know about the rules, where I felt pretty good, but I was like unsure. I think the fountain was more loose, but it was more like I was trying different things, like trying to do like Jerry Lewis and different stuff like that. And, eating the nuts and going back and forth with Rose, and do I eat a seed here or not? And I think that was a little bit more, I tried stuff. So I had a good time filming it, but I didn't know what they were going to use out of that. So that was a little bit more like, I wasn't sure, but I had a good time doing it.
All right, let's jump to Scream 2 now. So I was also watching your video about that, but the timeline like does not compute for me. I know you were getting bits and pieces of the script leading up to it, but there's just so little time between the release of Scream and Scream 2. So how long did it take until you actually had a full script in your hands?
Oh, Scream came out, and then I went away. I finished As Good as It Gets, and then I took a little vacation, I think. And then we were filming by June-ish. Late May, early June in Atlanta. So I probably got a script March-ish. Late March-ish, but it wasn't. It was like pages and partial script and the red line down the middle and the number, because they didn't want it on the internet. The internet was just starting to pop off and people were Xeroxing it and were they going to leak it? And that was a big deal. So I would say that I can't remember, but I remember we were in Atlanta by June. So probably we shot after Memorial Day, and it was probably March. I got a script, which was pretty quick. Maybe April, maybe even April.
So now correct me if I'm wrong, but even at that point, you don't know who the killers in Scream 2 are, and you didn't know during the table read, I think. So when did you find out who was behind the mask in Scream 2?
I gotten parts of it, and then I'm pretty sure that we didn't have the ending at the table read. I think only because they wanted to keep it a secret, but also they were like working it out still. So I think we had like 85 pages. I'm not sure if we had the total ending, but I always, remember that, Sarah Michelle Gellar was there, and when she read that, like, she falls off a roof and she's like, crap, and then like I was reading Randy and I had heard, and I'm like, he walks in front of a van, meets his untimely demise. I'm like, crap, like it was like, damn. So I think that we were learning as we went, but definitely I didn't know Laurie Metcalf or Timothy or Cotton Weary was coming back. I'm thinking as we go here, but I'm definitely thinking I didn't know so much of who the killer was. It was Laurie Metcalf, right?
Yeah, Laurie and Timothy Oliphant.
I think I didn't know. But I remember Timothy coming in, and I'm like, there's something about this dude that he's got to be. But Jerry could have been the red herring. You know what I mean? So
always the audience's eyes.
Yeah, right. So I definitely thought Timothy had a darkness to him. So I wasn't surprised when he was involved.
All right. What about when you're asked to come back for Scream 3? Was there any hesitation or apprehension because it wasn't a Kevin Williamson script? And then what did you think of your bit when you finally got it?
I was happy, to be a part of it. I was bummed that I was killed, but I thought this would be probably the last movie. I really did think that. And I thought, well, it was a good run, and, I'm going to be in this movie, and how cool is it? So we went, and I went one day and filmed the whole day, and I had all my, videotape stuff, and I thought that was a really cool way to put Randy in, and it was like totally made sense, and it was a completely on par with his character. So I thought, like, this is great. And then when I filmed it, I was a little bummed because I was only there for a day, and everyone was involved. And I was like, I wish I could have stayed part of it. But I thought at that point after this, and then they moved the release date to not Christmas. I think it was February of 2000. And I thought, maybe there was a little bit of fatigue in the genre. So that probably, and then it did. It took a little break for a while. But now I think it's going to be hotter than ever.
I'm a big believer that that's going to be the case.
Yeah. But it needed to go. It needed to take a little break to be reinvigorated in the new cast, new
Well, it's a very fair point given what Scream is. It's almost like it needed more material to work with and to apply to the meta concept to give it all of like that juiciness that the previous films have. Now we have a whole new crop of horror films for it to comment on, and I think that's brilliant.
Totally true. You have to live. It's like you can't make new art without experiencing life. So Scream had to experience life to then consume it and then comment on it.
Exactly. All right, now I got to ask you a little bit about Scream 5. I watched a trailer reaction as well and quite enjoyed that. So I keep reading all of these takes and theories that Randy might not be dead, and it's taking everything in me right now not to blurt out how strongly I feel that that should not be the case, as much as I love you. But what is your take on that? Would it just like, would you be excited if Randy wasn't dead, or is that just not a good idea?
You want him dead?
I want him dead because I'll never forget how powerful that death scene was and how much it broke my heart. And I wouldn't want it to take away from how good I think that scene is in Scream 2.
So then should other characters be brought back that are dead? Wow. Okay. So I understand it. You're a super cinephile, zealous, like the rules are the rules are the rules are the rules are the rules. I love what you're saying. I think you're right. It's like, what rule can you break here? You love him so much, even more because you lost him so early in his life and his career and his rants. So if he came back, does it negate what you felt? To all purposes, I know I'm dead. I'm not involved in Scream 5. I'm deader than a doornail. And I was killed in the 90s. So, but I agree with what you're saying, and that's interesting. But if he did, there are ways he could have come back or never died, or there's alternate verses. There's, he faked his death. There's all that type of stuff. But I believe he's dead.
Okay. In that
his legacy lives on. His legacy lives on.
That is a big thing. Everything that came after it, he appears in Scream 3 and conveys the rules, and then others tried to kind of pick up that mantle in Scream 4. There are characters that are kind of modeled off of him. His legacy will be present throughout.
I think that's what's good. You take the legacy and you move on from it.
Absolutely. A little predicting here. Do you have any ideas of who might be the killer in Scream 5, especially because there's ties to Stu's house, there's the tagline, it's always someone there's so many things that are pointing me back to the original right now.
I haven't followed as close as you have, so I don't know enough, but that's a great tagline. It's always someone you know. That's so good because that's what Scream is in all of the movies. Who is the killer in the third one?
In the third one?
Scott Foley.
I got feelings about that one.
People get in their feelings about it. Some people put 4 before 3. Yeah, you do. Yeah.
I do love 3 though.
Yeah. I don't know. They're saying the Stu's house is there. It's in it. Somebody sent me a picture and said there's a blurred out picture of Randy in it somewhere. So I don't know, but it probably is always someone you know. So who knows?
Jamie, thank you so much for hanging out with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Perry. I appreciate it. Appreciate you guys.